Welcome to Rise Up Voices from the Frontlines, your window into relationships, identity, safety, emotional awareness, regulation and intelligence, unleashed potential, passion and purpose.
Welcome back to Rise Up Voices from the Frontlines, and this is a trauma-informed leadership series episode. I'm your host, Krista Fee, and I can't wait to chat with you about scaling without selling out. This is guarding the North Star of leadership. Let's begin with the paradox of scale. Leadership has a way of attracting momentum. When you do something well, when you embody integrity, stand firmly in your values, or create meaningful impact, people will notice. With that attention comes opportunity. Donors will show up, partnerships will be offered, audiences will grow, and your movement will begin to swell. And of course, on the surface, this is everything that a leader wants. More resources mean more reach. More people mean more impact. And here's the paradox. Scale multiplies everything, strengths and weaknesses. So if your foundation is strong, scale can allow your impact to ripple outward in powerful, healing ways. But if cracks are hidden beneath the surface, that scale magnifies dysfunction until your whole structure falters. In trauma-informed leadership, this paradox matters even more because when movements or organizations grow without integrity, they don't just fail structurally, they replicate the very harms that they were created to heal. Hierarchy becomes domination. Expansion becomes exploitation. Scaling without grounding doesn't liberate, it builds empire. And I don't use the word empire in a positive way here. Empire here is not leadership. So let's talk about the dangers of empire plainly. The dangers that show up when growth takes the wheel without integrity at the helm. Mission drift. Growth creates pressure. Suddenly there are bills to pay, stakeholders to please, and funders with their own agendas. Organizations begin to stretch, shift, and compromise, often subtly at first, until what they're delivering no longer matches why they got started in the first place. We've seen this again and again with institutions like the American Red Cross, which has faced criticism over the years for prioritizing fundraising numbers and PR optics over transparent, effective disaster relief. What began as a mission of service has at times been overshadowed by the machinery of growth itself. Co-optation. When movements gain traction, external forces show up, not to join, not to help, but to redirect. Political figures, corporations, or opportunists may try to harness the movement for their own gain. What began as authentic healing or justice work becomes a tool in someone else's power play. The risk here isn't just manipulation, it's literally betrayal. For trauma survivors, communities of color, responders, or anyone carrying wounds of trust violation, co-optation feels like reenactment. The very system that promised safety becomes another stage for exploitation. Some organizations are built so tightly around a single charismatic leader that they can't survive that leader's absence, or failure, or betrayal. When everything rises and falls on one figure, the community is left vulnerable. And if that leader falters, the entire mission collapses. We've all seen examples of this. Churches devastated when a pastor falls, nonprofits crumbling after a founder burns out, or businesses collapsing because secession was never planned for. In trauma-informed work, the fallout is even harsher because followers are re-traumatized when the leader that they trusted abandons or betrays them. Replicating harm. Perhaps the most insidious danger is that when systems scale without care, they unconsciously replicate harm. Structures meant to heal trauma end up reenacting that same trauma. Silencing, shaming, exploitation. If they are not addressed early, they grow alongside the movement. Think about it. A small circle of survivors grows into a national nonprofit. If those survivors never addressed internalized patterns of silencing, the organization can become a place where voices are dismissed for the greater good. If founders haven't faced their wounds around control, they may unconsciously dominate decision-making as they expand. Scaling doesn't erase dysfunction. It magnifies it. So let's talk about guarding the North Star again. This is a phrase you're going to hear from me often because this is the foundational piece. How do we scale without selling out? How do we multiply impact without losing integrity? And the answer again is deceptively simple. Never lose sight of your North Star. Your North Star is the set of values, convictions, and principles that must remain non-negotiable no matter how big you grow. Strategies can change, structures can evolve, slogans can adapt, but values cannot drift, ever. Ask yourself again and again, what must never change? And what can adapt without compromising who we are? This is where leaders fail or succeed. Take Doctors Without Borders. Their commitment to neutrality and presence in the world's most dangerous places has often cost them politically and financially. Yet they've held the line because they know their North Star is non-negotiable. Their credibility doesn't come from how big they are. It comes from their fidelity. Contrast that with organizations that grow rapidly without clarity. They might achieve scale, but they eventually collapse because the compass is lost. So let's talk a little more about trauma-informed scaling and some practical strategies. If trauma-informed leadership is about building safety, trust, and dignity, then scaling has to be focused on multiplying those things, not diluting them. So here are 4 practical strategies. The first is mentorship and succession planning. True leaders prepare others to carry the mission forward. This prevents unwanted dependency and ensures continuity. Succession planning isn't just about who takes over when you're gone. It's about equipping leaders at every level so the mission outlives any specific personalities. 2, distributed decision-making. Trauma-informed systems decentralize authority. This prevents bottlenecks, reduces burnout, and communicates trust. Distributed leadership creates resilience. When one person falters, the system adapts. 3, codify values and protocols. Frameworks like the Rise Up Rules of Engagement or Rise Up Systems Matrix exist to protect integrity. They ensure that even when leadership changes, the core principles remain. Codification is protection against drift. And 4, collaborative partnerships. Empire hoards. Movements share. Trauma-informed leaders know that collaboration multiplies reach without domination. Partnerships with aligned organizations expand capacity without diluting values. The test of scale isn't really numbers, it's fidelity. A trauma-informed leader measures success by whether values remain intact, not by how big the spreadsheet gets. So, scaling without burning out. Scaling without integrity leads to empire. Scaling without boundaries leads to burnout. In trauma-informed leadership, the nervous system of the leader often sets the tone for the entirety of the organization. If the leader is constantly overextended, underrested, and reactive, that energy spreads. If repair is not modeled at the top, harm spreads unchecked. Scaling responsibility means embedding systems of care at every level. This means things like grounding rituals for staff and volunteers, built-in rest and recovery cycles, normalizing repair when harm occurs, and providing structures of accountability to prevent isolation. Scaling isn't just about adding more people or more reach. It's about building the capacity to sustain impact without collapsing under the weight of success. The moral compass of scale. Here's the hardest question trauma-informed leaders must ask when scaling. Am I building a movement of liberation, or am I building an empire of control? Because empires can look impressive from the outside. They may have funding, buildings, followers, even global recognition. But if that growth is built on compromise, coercion, or the betrayal of values, that empire will eventually crumble. Movements of integrity often look smaller, slower, and less flashy, but they endure because they're tethered to the North Star. They multiply dignity, not domination. They repair harm rather than replicate it. And I want to pause here and get a little personal. As the founder of the Rise Up Phoenix Trauma and Crisis Institute, I know what it feels like to be pulled towards scale. There's always another partnership, another funding proposal, another opportunity to expand. And in every one of those moments, I have to ask myself, what must never change? For me, the answer is clear. Our work must always honor dignity, integrity, and community. We never exploit survivors in the name of growth. And we must stay rooted in trauma-informed practices, not just trauma-informed branding. And I may not get every decision right. None of us are going to. But my compass must always point towards that integrity, because without it, scale means nothing. A few last thoughts on guarding that North Star. Scaling is not inherently dangerous. Growth can be beautiful. Multiplication can be powerful, but only if the North Star remains clear. The challenge of leadership is not whether we can grow, it's whether we can grow faithfully. The starfish story reminds us that leadership begins with one act, one life, one decision. But when scale comes, the temptation is to forget the one in pursuit of the many. And the truth is that we can only multiply impact if we multiply values equally. Growth that sacrifices principle is not leadership. It's just empire. But growth that multiplies integrity has the power to change the world. Growth that multiplies integrity has the power to change the world. I may only be able to save one starfish at a time, but together we can save them all. I may be just a single drop in the ocean, but together we become a tidal wave of change. So rise up out of the ashes of your experiences and live and lead your life on fire. And join me in the Rise Up Trauma-Informed Leadership course and community, or book a complimentary consultation to see how Rise Up can transform your life, relationship, family, organization, or community.
Become a Rise Up Hero sponsor to provide mental wellness and crisis response resources for those who serve country and community. Join us in the Rise Up movement today.